Hello and welcome to our watercolor journey. I experimented with masking fluid and I'll share the marvels and miseries of it with you in this video. The information and the links for everything that I used is in the description below. Just click the down arrow on your phone or show more on your PC. So these are all the things that I used when I made this experiment. And let's start with the Sennelier masking fluid. Now this is an amazing masking fluid. I really like it. It's by Sennelier and it's got a kind of a bluish tint to it, but very faint. So there's not a lot of pigment in it that would stain your paper. So it's actually a very nice one to use. One of the things to remember about masking fluid is to store it upside down so that the air bubble is at the bottom of the bottle and then it won't make a film in the lid of the bottle. So store it upside down, that works quite well. The next one I'm looking at is Winsor & Newton masking fluid. This one is yellow. I haven't used it since I bought it, so the pigment settled at the bottom. I did not store it upside down. So in order to get the pigment to mix a little bit into the rest of the fluid, you tip it gently. Do not shake it. You just tip it gently and the pigment should disperse. It's not a bad one. It's got a yellowish color to it, so that's also a good product to use. Then I have the Molotow. Now this is a masking fluid or a Frisket pen. And it's got a tip, kind of a push-in tip. So if you press on it, then it releases the masking fluid onto the paper. And it's fairly easy to use because it's got a tip. But this one that I have has a very thick tip. I think it's a 0.2. So you can't really make fine lines. When you let it lie, the liquid separates. So just give it a little shake. This one shakes quite nicely, not like the others. And then it will mix all the liquid inside again. Remember, masking fluid is a latex-based liquid with water. And you can just shake it and it will mix all of the ingredients. These are the brushes that I generally use, not always, but I use them on different occasions. These two are Art Secret pastel blending silicone brushes, and they work very well for masking fluid because the masking fluid doesn't stick to it. They're very easy to clean and quite easy to use. These ones are fairly big, so when you have large areas to mask out, it works very well. Then I have a no-name brand set of blending brushes that has plastic tips. The tips are very soft or flexible rather, and they also work very well with the masking fluid. Again, you can just literally rinse them off, nothing sticks. And this is my favorite. This is a very old child's no-name type of junky brush. And I've been using this one for a year now, give or take, and I had no problem with it. I pour my masking fluid into a separate cup because masking fluid does not like air. So I don't leave the bottle open. I pour out in a little bit in a cup, and then I use that. Also, many people recommend you have watery soap water to use to rinse your brush in. The soap coats the hairs of the brush, and then you won't have a problem with cleaning it afterwards. The liquid won't stick to the brush then. I don't really like the soapy water because it adds more water to your masking fluid, and that can cause a drama. I will show you later on what happens. Then my very favorite thing about masking fluid is the actual eraser. This is a rubber cement eraser that I got from Amazon. and it is really, really cool. It literally just lifts it off the paper. You can use a plastic eraser, but that gives you a little bit more hard work to do. Okay, you can also use a tissue or your finger, but the rubber eraser works very, very nice, the cement eraser. Right, so we are going to get started with this whole thing. I made a drawing just to have something to work with, and to show you, the pencil lines are really, really dark. I used a 4B pencil and it's quite dark. So to get the pencil lines a little bit lighter so that they don't stand out in the painting, I use a kneadable eraser by Faber-Castell. And this is fantastic because it doesn't damage your paper. You knead it together and just roll it over the paper and it lifts off the excess graphite. So no damage to your paper. Right, so let's pour some Sennelier into the cup and let's see what happens with the masking fluid experiment. Starting off with the little plastic brush, because the painting isn't really big, I'm going to use the small plastic brush first to show you what happens when you add that. I did wet it a little bit in the soap and then I just dabbed it on the towel, and I'm using the very thin tip to start coloring in the areas that I want to mask out. Now I'm using a lot more masking fluid than is technically necessary for the sake of the video so that you can see it more clearly. But you don't have to put so much masking fluid. You can literally just pull a line over it and don't make it too thick. The thicker you make it, the more of the liquid water base will soak into your paper. So don't make it too thick, and it will also take too long to dry if you make it so thick. It should take about 10 minutes to maybe a half an hour to dry properly. And one of the main things to remember is that your paper must be dry before you use masking fluid. So now I'm over to my brush. I dipped it in the soapy water, dabbed it again, and I am just painting in the other areas that I want to coat or want to preserve on my paper. I found personally that the brush works better. It doesn't really have a fine tip because I've used it for a long time, and it kind of splays at times. So very fine detail work is a bit of an issue. But other than that, the brush worked very well. I'm done with the Sennelier. I'm pouring it all back into the cup or into the bottle so that I don't waste anything. And now I'm going to work with the Winsor & Newton. Now, keep in mind, I haven't used this, and that's the result. It's been standing on my shelf for about 6 months, and it became thick and gooey and yuck. So I took the blobby parts out, and the rest of it is actually quite usable still. I was quite surprised. So I used the Winsor & Newton here, and the yellowish color is quite nice. And there it started to get thick on my brush again, so I dipped the brush in water and I didn't rinse it off enough. So it was quite watery, and I think I'm going to have a problem there where it was so watery. But let's have a look at what happens because of the watery mix. Here I use the silicone brush, and because this Winsor & Newton just, I don't know, it stayed thick and it made these little balls of gum, I don't know what you call it, in the masking fluid, and it sort of rubbed off on the paper. So I got fed up with it and I went back to my Sennelier and very smoothly finished the rest of the masking that I wanted to do. I'm using my paintbrush, my old masking fluid paintbrush, to just splatter some masking fluid to give the effect of snow in my very strange painting. So you just dip it in the masking fluid, tap it lightly, and depending on how large you want the little snow blobs to be, you can make the fluid a little bit more liquid, or you can just keep your brush closer or further away from the paper. Right now we're on the Molotov. Now this one is a bright blue. If you press on the tip, then the glue comes out. It's a really bright blue, so it's very, very easy to see. It goes on very, very well. And we'll see how this one reacts when we are done. Okay, so I used the Sennelier with the different brushes. I cleaned all my brushes. Now it is time to let your painting dry. Do not use a hair dryer on masking fluid. It will make it tacky and it will make it very difficult to remove. Let it dry naturally. How do you know it's dry? If you press on it and it feels cool or cold and it does not stick to your finger, then it's fine. It might still be tacky, but it won't stick to your finger. Right, so let's get painting. I'm using a Wahong flat brush, and this one is a Hake. And I am really going to soak this paper because I want to see what happens to the masking fluid when it's so very, very wet. So I soaked the paper with water, and even my background paint, the pigment is really, really watery. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Picked up the excess on the side so that there's no seepage underneath my tape. And I let it dry. Again, no hair dryer. Right, so I did not put masking fluid at the top because I wanted to show you that you can put masking fluid on top of your paint. But here the wheels came off. I did not wait for it to dry properly. Now you can see there where I start to write very, that you can barely see the masking fluid because it's actually seeping into the paper as I painted on. There's just no masking fluid there. I tried adding it a little bit thicker and you could see it, but it just sort of disappeared into the paper. It was very annoying because I actually really wanted to show you that you can put masking fluid onto the paint, and it does work. It just didn't work for me this time. So I'm trying to add extra, which is probably not such a good idea because now I'm just making it thicker and thicker and thicker, and it would probably not work so well. But let's see. So again, let it dry completely. Very dry this time. I'm going to start painting the rest of my wacky painting, and I'm using my Princeton Snap brushes. These are beautiful brushes for a beginner. They are synthetic, they're not as soft as natural hair brushes, so they are a little bit easier to control if you are still a beginner. Very light mix of, what was it, Prussian blue, just to kind of isolate some of the objects in the snow area. And then I started painting the tree. This is just sap green, and I loved how the masking fluid just sort of pushed the paint away, pushed it out of the way. So sap green there, and because it's on the blue background, it makes these different colors. And then I added a little bit of shadow green or perylene green, again just to kind of isolate the masking fluid areas to show you a lot better what it looks like. And what you need to take note of here is that I am really soaking this masking fluid. It is wet, 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 wet. You can see my little splatters popping out there in the tree. Okay, now details on the insides. That is Perylene Red Medium from Core that I'm using. And it's only when I started painting that I thought I actually masked out the wrong areas on each of these things. But that's okay. The point was to show you what the masking fluid can do and cannot do. So adding the paint for my little bauble there, bright red. I love this red. It's got a velvety color and it spreads like wildfire. Well, it's Core, so it will spread. Give it another layer just to let it stand out a little bit. And again, I let it dry a little bit. This time I made sure that it's dried completely before you start erasing. So here I am with the rubber eraser, the cement eraser, and this thing is so fantastic. You literally just loosen the fluid at an edge and then you can pull it off. If you've applied it in a fluid motion, then look, you can just pull it off. So loosen it up and pull it off. Of course, if you dabbed it in bits and pieces, then you'll have to rub a little bit more. But other than that, it works. Right, Schminke Bronze. It's actually gold, but they call it bronze, and it's a powder. And this thing is worse than child's glitter. It goes everywhere. So I have a little spoon there, plastic spoon, and a separate container and a completely separate brush. That brush is only used for the gold because it goes into everything. It is really worse than glitter. I don't use the same rinse water. I don't bring it near my other paints, and that brush is not used for anything else. So I'm going to start painting on the masked out areas, and the gold paint works very well. It sits, there's no problem painting it in. This is it's very important to keep it liquidy because it becomes thick rather quickly, and then it makes a film on top of the mixture. Kind of, you know, like when you boil milk and it makes that little skin on top. This does the same thing. So if you don't keep it wet, then it will make that skin, and the skin sits on the brush. And then it's very difficult to really paint nice and fine lines and so on. So keep it wet and mix it often. So I'm just playing around here with the gold, adding it to the baubles, and just trying to see what it does on the different kinds of masking fluid. How does it sit? How does it paint? And so on. Right. So far, so good. It sits everywhere. It's going on well. It's going on smoothly. So there shouldn't be any hassles with the final painting. Now I'm putting it onto the area where I added the extra masking fluid. And oh boy, this was a thing. It's not really a problem that the masking fluid was put onto a previous layer of paint. The problem came in where I did not let the paint dry properly before adding the masking fluid. You can see clearly that I'm painting and painting and painting, and it's not sticking. The paint does not stick. The reason is that the liquid, the water of the masking fluid soaked into the paper, and it kind of pulled the basic latex molecules into the paper with it, and now the paint won't sit on the latex, and you can rub and rub, it will not come off. So the moral of the story there, you have to have a dry surface before you add your masking fluid. That, I think, is the bottom line rule of masking fluid. Right, so here I'm just adding, that's the Prussian blue again, and a little bit of indigo that I'm adding to give a little bit of texture to the sock there. I didn't want a red sock, I wanted a blue one. Remember here I used this Winsor & Newton, and I had to rinse my brush and I didn't dry it properly. And I was very worried that this part is going to do exactly the same as what I had at the top of the Christmas tree, where I had the very Merry Christmas thing. But it worked very well. So kudos to Winsor & Newton. It didn't soak into the paper, even though it looked like it had, but it didn't. So maybe the Winsor & Newton is not such a bad idea when you use it properly. On all the other areas, the paint stuck really very well. It sits well, it paints well, it glides on easily. So basically it was just that part where I messed up with the background, that the paint didn't want to sit properly. And if you keep in mind also that I really soaked this paper, and the masking fluid was really wet on, and it still works. Now here's the second thing. You remember the Molotow, the bright blue one, came off easily enough, but unfortunately it did exactly the same thing as the Sennelier did. It soaked into the paper, even though it was very dry there where I added it, and it left a kind of a latex residue, so the paint wouldn't stick. It's not sitting. So I personally would not recommend the Molotow. Not a good one to use. That was Quinacridone Magenta by Core, and that's the Perylene Red Medium again, also Core. Prussian Blue, Winsor & Newton. No, that's Schmincke. Adding a little bit more just to let it stand out against the snow. That one is Nickel Azo Yellow, Core, of course. And adding a touch of the red just to let it stand out a little bit more against the gold. Didn't want to mess up my little dot of snow there. And emphasizing the ribbon and the shadows on the box. Right, and there you have it. So if you did this painting and if you tried working with it, then now you can sign it. It is yours, it's your work of art, no matter what it looks like. The purpose here was just to demonstrate the masking fluid. So I took the tape off Remember, pull it at a 45-degree angle so as not to damage your paper. And if it gets stuck, just blow it with a hairdryer, then it will loosen the glue and it will come off much easier. So I finished it, and then I put it up on the easel and had a look at it, and I thought, it needs something, but I didn't know what. So here I used the Sennelier. There I used the Molotov, and it didn't work very well. So I would suggest that you make sure that your paper is dry and that you buy a good quality masking fluid. Winsor & Newton and Sennelier is excellent, but make sure your paper is dry. Otherwise, it will soak into the paper and you will not be able to rub it off, ever. And there's the final painting. I just added a few shadows underneath the objects just to ground them. And that's it. Thank you for sharing our watercolor journey. Happy painting!